Hey everyone. So today we are going to be talking about the changes that we can basically look forward to in 2025 once Trump officially becomes the next president of the United States. So, as always, if you have questions, put them in the comments. If you are watching this on the replay and you have questions, put them in the comments. Tell me what you think, okay? So, the point here today is to basically go through what we think, or at least what I think, we can expect in 2025 as far as immigration is concerned and what you can do to prepare for that. Okay, so I don't believe in scaring people, right? That's something I definitely do not believe in, but I do want to give you a realistic expectations of what could happen in 2025 and beyond, so that you are prepared and you are taking steps now and not waiting. Okay, so that's first thing. And then I do want to make something clear because I did a video on Tuesday that I posted on my YouTube channel where we talked about denaturalization, what it means, who it could affect, and why you should not be scared of it. And one of the comments I got on that video is someone pointing out to me that the reason that I'm making the video is that I am not from here. So if you're watching this and you don't already know this, I am a US citizen. However, I was born in Nigeria. I immigrated to the US. So I try to make that clear in my video. If you've ever been to my website, that is very clear as well. But just know, the reason I make these videos is that not only am I an immigration lawyer that helps immigrants get green cards and citizenships, I'm also an immigrant. So if that wasn't clear, I just want to get that out at the beginning because for some reason that was an issue for one of the viewers. So I always want to make sure that I am transparent and clear in everything. So if that wasn't clear, hopefully now it's clear. Hi, Barhane. Thank you for joining. If you're joining, please feel free to say hi in the comments. Tell me where you're joining me from. And like I always say, if you have questions, put them in the comments, okay? Thank you. All right. So we're going to break this down into like what he wants to do, what he can realistically do in the first like 6 months, and what you can do. All right. Because sometimes what the president wants to do is not the same thing as what the president can actually do. So let's be very clear on that. And then we'll talk about what you can do to prepare for that. And I already see your question, Berhane. I will get to it actually once I start talking about what he wants to do. All right, so what we can expect really is they will most likely try to bring back all the executive orders that took place when in the last administration. So there was like hundreds of executive orders around immigration, including the travel bans and all of that. So they will most likely try to bring all of those back. But as you all know, all of those things ended up in court, right? So most of the travel bans did not actually go into effect because there was lawsuits, and that's not going to change, all right? There's still going to be lawsuits on every single thing, just like in the Biden administration. Whenever he tried to do anything, there's lawsuits. So that part of it is not going to change. However, we do have to, remember that at least for the next 2 years, he has both the executive and the legislative branches of government. unlock. So he may be able to pass laws that, let's say, Biden was not able to pass. So really important to understand how this actually works. One thing that he mentioned is mass deportations, and I know a lot of you out there are worried about that, who can be affected, and how will that actually work. So there's something called expedited removal, and in my opinion, that is going to be the easiest way to do the mass deportations that he wants to do. So expedited removal is typically if you cannot prove that you've been in the US for a specific amount of time, with documentation, the US government can remove you without you ever having to go through immigration court. Okay, so they can try to expand that and try to get more people covered under expedited removals. So people that have been in the US for less than 2 years are at higher risk for expedited removals. Again, all of these things can be, will most likely end up in court, in federal court, to try to basically reduce the impact of it. He has mentioned that TPS is one of the things that he wants to end. So TPS is temporary protected status. The US government can designate certain countries for temporary protected status because of conditions in that country. Right now, there's several countries that are covered under TPS, and they are able to get temporary status in the US and be able to get work permits in the US. It does not lead to permanent residency, nor does it lead to citizenship. However, it gives the people temporary status in the US and reduces the risk of deportation of those individuals. So if TPS is ended for certain countries, then the people that are already on TPS will now have to really figure out if there's another basis for them to get status. And there's also a risk that because the US government already has your information, if you do not have another means of getting status, you may end up in immigration court proceedings, basically deportation proceedings. So really important that if you do have TPS, that you're doing consultations to see if there's other means for you to gain status. Okay. With TPS, there's two things that the president can do, which is either rescind the TPS, basically take it away, right? Basically say, if you currently have TPS for these countries, we are rescinding it. It is going into effect on this date, right? So that's one thing. TPS is for 18 months, so it does expire unless it is renewed by the country. So they can also choose to just not redesignate the country for TPS. So either rescind it right away or choose not to redesignate it once it comes up for that renewal. So TPS is one of the ones that's definitely on the chopping block, and depending on the country and the US government's public foreign policy with the country, that can affect who gets to keep TPS designation. All right, I'm going to get to Barhane's question. Can you extend humanitarian parole for Nicaraguan? My girlfriend visa expires July 2025. We just got married. We'll do I-130 and I-485. What happens if it does not get approved before her visa expires? So I would suggest filing as soon as possible. Typically, the laws at the time you file is the laws that will apply. So because she came in with a parole and you are a US citizen, she will be able to adjust her status even if the parole expires. Okay. However, the key is having the parole. Once a person is in the US, they can adjust their status through a US citizen spouse without having to maintain the parole the whole time, right? So you want to file just to make sure that she is protected and have something pending before that parole expires. Um, Now let's talk about that parole program. Um, as y'all know, that parole program was created by the Biden administration, and it is most likely going away under the Trump administration. So anything that's still pending or that is not approved before January 20th may not be able to get it, because the chances of them continuing with the program is very slim. So just putting that out there. So for those parole programs, if you still have cases pending, so the I-134A, if you still have cases pending, which a lot of people do, okay, a lot of people do. If you have reasons, humanitarian grounds for expediting, it does not hurt to ask for an expedite. The worst the government will say is no, that it doesn't qualify for an expedite. However, if there are, health reasons, safety reasons for an expedite, put in the request for the expedite. You really want to get those cases moving and the person in the US before January 20th, just in case, right? Just in case the program gets rescinded and we can't move forward with it, okay? Remember, everything that comes with executive orders that's not coming directly from Congress or that's not coming from case law through the Supreme Court can be changed by the next president. Okay, so any program that's through executive order, that's through the executive branch, can be changed by the next executive branch. So really important to keep that in mind. So you want to move your case, especially the parole cases, as quickly as humanly possible. Sometimes it's not possible to expedite the case because there's just not a reason that meets the requirements. However, if there is reasons that meet the requirements, go ahead and request that expedite. All right. So that's another thing that will be going away is the I-134A parole program. Another thing that will, again, executive action by Biden is most likely going away. Anything that was done by executive action, such as the CBP-1 app, where someone that's outside of the U.S. can request an appointment with CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, to basically have an interview to see if they qualify if they have credible fear of returning to their country, and then they can be allowed to enter the U.S. to seek asylum, right? That program is definitely going to be going away, and Remain in Mexico is going to come back. So Remain in Mexico is basically an agreement between the U.S. government and the Mexican government to have asylum seekers that are trying to enter the U.S. stay in Mexico and not come into the U.S. And basically try to figure out an agreement with the Mexican government to make it so that they never actually enter the U.S. So that whole process of trying to process their asylum applications while they're outside of the U.S. was a big mess the last time. And it's most likely going to be a mess this time around too. But one thing that's going to be going away is that CBP-1 app, which made it less stressful for people. They can actually talk to the U.S. government, get that credible fear interview, and then if they pass that, then they can enter the U.S. knowing that they basically presented themselves. They're not trying to sneak in. They're going through a process. So that CBP-1, again, executive order, is going away. One thing that will be coming back is the public charge rule. So if you're applying for a spouse or a parent or a child, you need to know that the public charge rule is going to be back. There was a form during the Trump administration, the I-944, that went away during the Biden administration. it's most likely going to come back again. And the person that you're filing for needs to prove that they will not be a public charge. This is regardless of if you are filing an affidavit of support for them. Okay, so really keep that in mind. So regardless of if you're filing an affidavit of support, they may need to fill out this additional form and meet these additional requirements. So they're basically looking at age, employment history, education history. Of course, this does not apply to minors because they are minors. But if you're filing for an adult, you need to understand that this will potentially come back, and this is going to affect a lot of people, right? Especially if you are filing for a parent that is elderly and is not able to work. This is going to affect them more than someone that's like young and is, educated and able to work and has work experience or all those things. So public charge rule, we need to, start preparing for that to come back. You need to make sure you have your certificate, okay, ready to go. Remember, it applies with USCIS and it applies with the embassy. So you want to make sure that on both ends, you're prepared for that eventuality of the public charge rule coming back. All right. Another thing that we need to think about is the travel bans. So anyone that lived through the first administration knows that there were travel bans, right? There were certain countries that their nationals were not allowed to travel into the U.S. unless they were U.S. citizens, permanent residents, or they already have a visa as the immediate relatives of U.S. citizens. So really important to keep that in mind, especially if you are in the U.S., right? And you have advanced parole, meaning you have permission to be able to return to the U.S. if you were to travel outside of the U.S. If you have plans to travel outside of the U.S., okay, you need to make sure that you are back in the U.S. before January 20th. I am not trying to scare you. However, if you are not a citizen and you are not a permanent resident and you have a visa to the U.S., or you have advanced parole to be able to return to the U.S., you want to make sure that you're coming back into the U.S. before January 20th, just in case, right? Just in case they decide to do an executive order on day one. And if that executive order on day one includes a travel ban, and now you're outside of the US and you're covered under that travel ban, you're not going to be able to come back into the US. Okay, so really important that we do not take a risk here. Okay, we don't know what's going to happen on day one or the first week. So please consider that if you are planning on traveling. At the end of the day, again, not trying to scare you, but trying to make sure that you are safe and that your family is safe in this whole process, okay? It's going to be a transition. However, the more prepared you are, the better you're going to be able to ride the wave of the transition, all right? So traveling is one thing that really you don't want to do if you are not a permanent resident or a U.S. citizen. You don't want to be outside of the U.S. At that time. So if you have an immigrant visa, don't delay using your immigrant visa to come into the U.S. You really want to get all of that done, right? You want to come in, have your permanent residency. If you need to travel after that, you're good to go. But you want to make sure that you are in here before that date, just in case, okay? Just in case. I know, again, full disclosure, I'm Nigerian, I know Nigeria was on the travel ban list, the first round of the travel bans. So I know the fear and how, crazy that whole thing was. Um, and again, not trying to scare you here, just trying to give you information. And this is something that is realistically, it's more realistic to happen on the first week, right? That travel ban is realistic to happen. And the reason I know that it is more realistic to happen is because some universities are telling their foreign students, so the students that are coming in on F1 visas, they are already telling them to make sure they are physically in the US before January 20th, because they don't know, right? We don't know what's going to happen. So they are sending emails to their foreign students on F1 visas, letting them know, make sure you're physically in the US before January 20th. And if your visa has expired, you need to figure out the best way to renew that or do an extension in the US. Whatever you need to do, you need to physically be in the US, just in case your country is on the banned list, if that happens. That's what some universities are sending out to their students. So I am not overreacting here. The first time around, this affected a lot of students. So that's also why they're being proactive in giving this particular advice. So students that were approved for the F1, but they weren't already in the US, if their country was on the banned list, they weren't allowed to come in. It caused a lot of issues for universities and their students. So this time around, they are being proactive in advising their students, because there's not much they can do if that becomes the case, right? If you get your visa and you delay coming into the US and then your country ends up being banned, or for some reason there's an executive order that makes it impossible for you to come into the US, there's not much your university can do for you. So you want to make sure that you are following their recommendations as far as being in the US before January 20th. All right. So another thing to keep in mind, there is the threat of denaturalization. I did a video on Tuesday. It's on my YouTube channel. Go watch it. Listen, denaturalization is a thing that happens, right? The US government can bring a lawsuit against you, either in criminal court or civil court, federal court, to try and take away your citizenship. But, they have to meet like really high burdens in order to be able to take away someone's citizenship. So typically, in the past, it's usually people that were war criminals or families of war criminals, people that benefited from those things, that are denaturalized. Okay, the chances of every single naturalized person being put in the denaturalization proceedings, not high, right? It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of manpower to go through all those cases and then decide who to refer to the attorney general to then have them bring the lawsuit. Okay. They still have to follow federal laws, right? There's federal rules of civil procedure. There's federal rules of criminal procedure. Like there's certain things, there's rights that you have. They cannot infringe on those rights. So they have to follow the law when it comes to that. So when people are talking about denaturalization as something that is, going to happen, yes, that's what they want to do. However, if you ever end up in denaturalization proceedings, please, one thing, get a lawyer that specializes in denaturalization, okay? That specializes in federal court. I'm not that person for you, but there are lawyers that is a specialty of theirs. So you want to make sure that you are protecting yourself in that way and not be afraid to fight it either, okay? Because it's a high burden that they have to meet. Okay, beyond a reasonable doubt is a high burden. Okay, so that's why denaturalization is not something that I think like every single naturalized person should be afraid of. It's just something that you need to have on the back of your head if it does happen, to know the steps to take. And the first step is getting that lawyer. Okay, do not represent yourself in federal court, because again, I would never. I've been a lawyer for almost a decade. I will never represent myself in court, especially federal court. So just want to make that very clear. And I do not handle those cases. So if you're in that situation and you're not able to find someone, feel free to reach out. We can probably get you some referrals, okay? We, for the next 4 years, we are here to help. Even if it's not something that I handle, right? I can probably find you someone that does handle it and that can help you. All right. So the next 4 years, we are going to be helping each other get through it. And I'll be bringing you any executive orders that could potentially affect you. We'll be talking about it right here. Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about, which people have mentioned, Trump has mentioned this as well, which is the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 as a way. So he mentioned this as a way to just mass deport everyone. And then people got scared, right? It's like, oh, there's this law that says you can just, deport or incarcerate these people from these countries, as long as you label them as alien enemies. Well, let's talk about what it actually means, because again, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of misinformation. So let's talk about what the law says and, how they can actually maybe apply it. So the law literally says, whenever there shall be a declared war between the United States and any foreign nation or government, and the President of the United States shall make public proclamation of the event, all natives, citizens, denizens, or subjects of the hostile nation or government, being males of the age of 14 years and upwards, who shall be within the United States and not actually naturalized, shall be liable to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as alien enemies. And then in 1918, Congress amended that to include women. So I know the law, when it was created, says males, but in 1918, they included women in it. So let's break this down. All right. This law has only been applied 3 times. Okay. In the War of the War of 1812 against the British, World War I against German Empire and Austria-Hungary, and then World War II against the Japanese, German, and Italian nationals. So yes, this law is in the books. However, it's only been applied 3 times. And let's go through the key things here. There has to be a declared war between the United States and the country that the person is from. And the person cannot be a citizen. So if the person is already a naturalized citizen, this does not apply to them. All right. So again, fear is out there, but when you break it down, how realistic is it that millions and millions of people are just going to be swept up under the Alien Act of 1798 if the U.S. must declare war against that country before they can apply this? So again, fear's out there, but the truth is the truth. for them to apply this, unless Congress amends this, right? Remember, Congress made the law, so Congress can amend the law. So unless there's an amendment that takes away the declared war part of this, nothing happens unless the US government is in an official war with that country. All right, so really important to put that out there because I have seen that every single place. People talking about this, the president-elect talking about this, that he's going to use this to mass deport people. Again, unless that declared war part, that requirement, okay? It's not a maybe if there's a declared war. No, it says whenever there shall be a declared war. So that's number one thing that needs to take place before anything else in that law can be applied. So when you know the facts, the fear kind of goes away, right? Because they want you to be afraid, oh my goodness, this law is going to come into play. But unless the US declares war or Congress amends this law to take away the declared war part of it, or like finagles it in a way that it will include more things than just a declared war, there's not really much that this law can do as far as mass deportation is concerned. So don't be afraid of that, okay? If something does happen where the government, Congress passes a law or there's a declared war on a specific country, remember, in order to declare war, let me even say that. In order to declare war, Congress has to be involved, okay? The president does not declare war on a country, Congress does. So there's a lot that needs to happen before this law can even be applied. So Congress has to be very much involved one way or the other, right? If they want to apply it the way it is and declare a war, Congress has to be involved. If they want to amend it to include more things or to take away that declared war part, Congress has to be involved. So it's not something to really, in my opinion, be afraid of at this moment of being applied on day one or even the first 6 months, because it takes a lot of time to do all of these things. So I'm just trying to get through all the things that people have asked me about, that I just want to make sure I touch on each of them. I'll be doing a more detailed video on like each of these things, but just wanted to cover as much as I can in this video. If you have questions, please feel free to put it in the comments. Okay. Now let's talk about what you can do, right? We've talked about what, the president-elect and his cabinet members can do come 2025. Let's talk about what you can do between now and January 20th to basically try to figure out what you qualify for, right? First thing you need to do is, if you do not already have legal status in the US, right? You're not a permanent resident. You're not, you don't have an approved asylum, right? You don't have a permanent status. Okay, this temporary status, I'm talking about if you do not already have a permanent status in the US, you need to go ahead and schedule a consultation with an immigration lawyer. Okay? With an immigration lawyer, and figure out what do you potentially qualify for. Because I've had consultations where people come to me and we are able to like really deep dive and figure out what could they potentially qualify for. Okay, if you do not qualify for a waiver right now, but you need a waiver, what can you do to fix it? Right? What can you do to then qualify for a waiver? So it's just also planning for the future. It's something that people don't think about, but that's what a consultation is for also. It's not just to go and talk to a lawyer and be like, okay, I want to apply for X, let's go ahead and apply for it. our job is to talk with you and figure out, is there something you can qualify for? Okay, even if you don't qualify for it today, maybe these are the steps you can take to eventually qualify for it, or to prepare yourself for once you qualify for it. So, really important that you're getting that consultation. If you are currently in immigration court proceedings, you're having to check in with ICE, do a consultation, please. I will be meeting with my clients throughout the rest of the year to just get them prepared and understand, if you have an ICE check-in, this is what you can expect moving forward, okay? Next thing, after you do that consultation, if there is something you qualify for, apply for it. Okay? If there's something you qualify for, start applying for it. I will tell you that I had a client once. We filed their green card application through marriage. They overstayed their visa, right? Had a green card application through marriage already pending. And again, this was under the Trump administration, so let me say that. And they got a knock on their door, random day, got a knock, and it was ICE. And the ICE officer, was asking him questions. He was about to be detained, and he let the officer know, hey, I have a lawyer. We already filed my adjustment of status application. ICE asked him to give me his contact. So I had to call the ICE officer, explain what we have filed, give them the receipt numbers, make sure they can see it in their system that everything has been filed. And because we already filed it and they can see that they seemingly qualify for adjustment of status, they left him alone. They did not detain him. Okay, so really important that you apply for something if you qualify for it. Sometimes just having an application pending can protect you from being detained, from being in immigration court proceedings. Okay, so you want to make sure, file the application, have it pending. Okay, as soon as you can. All right, as soon as you know you qualify for it, go ahead and start the process. So that's the next thing. And then, as I mentioned before, if you do plan on traveling outside of the U.S. between now and January 20th, and you are not a permanent resident or a U.S. citizen, make sure that you are physically back in the U.S. before January 20th. Again, this is just to protect you, because we do not know if there's going to be an executive order on day 1, day 2, or day 30. We do not know. We do suspect that they will have executive orders ready to go on day 1. That's what I suspect. That's what I'm expecting, and that's what I'm preparing for in my practice. Right? So if that does happen, that there's an executive order, just know I will bring all of those to you and keep you updated every single step of the way. All right. This is something that truly matters and can make a huge difference in people's lives. So you want to make sure that you are protecting yourself. One thing you need to also do, if you are undocumented, okay? If you are undocumented and you are working, you need to have a plan in case there's a workplace raid by ICE. You just need to have a plan. Does it mean that you are actually going to have to use that plan? I hope not. But again, it's about being prepared. That's the whole thing. It's about being prepared. So you want to make sure that you have a plan. You memorize phone numbers. I know now it's hard for people to memorize, family members' phone numbers and all of that. Memorize. Okay, memorize a phone number that you can call and you can tell the person what's going on. Have a lawyer that if you have consulted with a lawyer, give copies of your documentation to that person that you're going to be calling. and have something, saying that you give them permission to share that information with the lawyer. All right. Because if you do get picked up by ICE and you're detained, your family will need to find you and then start the steps to try to get you out of detention. And typically, we would need a certain documentation for you in order to do all of that. So really make sure you're making copies of your documents and that you are keeping it with one or several family members or friends that can help you in case that happens. Workplace raids may come back on the Trump. So they did that the first time around. It's most likely going to happen again. So just be prepared. And then finally, know your rights. Okay. Please know your rights. When it comes, when ICE knocks on your door, when any law enforcement knocks on your door, remember, you do not have to open the door. Okay? Remember that. You do not have to open the door. You can call your lawyer while all of that is happening, right? You need to ask them for a warrant because they cannot come into your home unless they have a warrant. They cannot arrest you unless they have a warrant. Okay? So you really need to do all, follow these steps. Okay? So if they knock on your door, do not just open the door and tell them to come in, especially if you know you are undocumented. Please. Okay? They are not your friends. Even under the Biden administration, I tell my clients, ICE is not your friend. All right? So they are not your friends. You are going to want to protect yourself as much as possible throughout this whole process. Okay? We are in protection mode right now. So make sure you know your rights and that you are taking steps to protect yourself. Feel free to leave me a comment. I have like a whole know your rights thing as far as what what your rights are if you're detained, if you're driving, all those things. So if you would like, I can do like a link where people can get that document. So if you would like for me to do that and have like the link in this video or in future videos of the know your rights things, just put know your rights in the comments and I will see that and I will go ahead and make that link available to you all. But you definitely need to know that you have rights, and in certain situations you have more rights than in other situations. Okay, if you are flying, your rights are limited than if you are in your home. If you're driving, your rights are more limited than if you are in your home. All right. So really important to know that. Really important to get that consultation. All right. Get that consultation. File your applications as soon as you can. If you need to travel now and come back before January 20th. And just stay up to date. Okay. With when I say stay up to date with actual factual things happening in immigration, right? Not what you get in the some of the WhatsApp groups where people are just sharing things and not knowing that it's fake. Okay, so whatever does happen, just know I will be covering it. I will be telling you all about it. So don't be, don't worry about it. As far as getting information, you will get the information as soon as it happens. And as always, the information is going to come with these are the things you can do to protect yourself, or this is the things you can do to avoid whatever that executive order or whatever that new thing is. Okay. So we are going to be doing follow-up Tuesday videos on the different things here. Because the public charge rule is I'm 90% sure it's going to be coming back. I'll be doing a video on that, just breaking down what it is, what we saw last time, how they applied it last time, and what you can do moving forward with your applications to make sure that you are stacking it with the documentation, especially if you are not going to be filing your adjustment of status or having your interview at the embassy before January 20th. You just want to make sure that you have that information. So I will be making sure to get that to you. So any new changes, know that I will bring it to you. If you have questions, please put them in the comments. Like I said, don't be afraid, right? I will always say that. Don't be afraid. There's a lot that can happen. However, there are laws. They still have to follow certain procedures. And there are lawyers out here that are fighting and going to continue to fight to make sure that the government is held to their to the standards of the laws. So that's what I have for you today. If you have questions, please put them in the comments. I'll stick around for a little bit longer if there's any questions. Actually, I can answer this question. So if you do not already have status, but you already filed an application, what can you expect moving forward? Well, it's going to depend on what you filed for. So if you filed an adjustment of status because you're the immediate relative of a U.S. citizen, you are in a better position because those applications are going to be processed. It may slow down though. So if they're pulling officers from those applications and putting them on denaturalization, for example, that's going to cause, right? That's going to cause delays on your adjustment of status application. However, they're still going to process it. And if you do qualify, they're still going to approve it. The only thing is, it's going to take longer and they may require more of you. Also, the no interview approvals are probably going to go away as well. So those are the things that can happen with those adjustment of status applications, where before you were able to get it approved without an interview, you may now have to go back to every single application having an interview. And if that becomes the case, then that's also going to lead to delays because officers are people and they can only handle so many interviews a day. So that's for people applying for adjustment of status in the U.S. If you are, let's say, applying for asylum in the U.S. and you apply for your asylum with USCIS, you know there's already a delay, but they're probably going to go back to doing the last in, first out, meaning if whoever files their application last is most likely going to get their interview first. All right. So that's probably what's going to happen with those asylum applications moving forward. But you need to know, if you have your asylum application filed, you're going to have an interview. The question is, how long is it going to take before you get your interview? And how strict is the officer going to be in your interview? Right? Those are the two things that is really the things that can change, is how long it's going to take and how harsh the officer is going to be at the interview. All right. If you have TPS, you need to start figuring out what else you can apply for, right? Because if your country does not get redesignated for TPS, or the TPS is rescinded for your country, you need to know that you have something else already in place that's going to get you status in the US, all right? Because once the TPS designation is rescinded, or TPS is, your country is now redesignated, you're going to go back to having no status. All right. So that's the problem here. So you don't want to go back to having no status. So like I said, get that consultation, figure out what you can do in the meantime to get you to a place where you can eventually get status. All right. All right, so I do not see any other questions. I want to thank you all so much for joining me. Let me know if you have questions. If you're watching this on the replay and you have questions, please go ahead and ask, because we're in this together, all right? We're going to be discovering everything together, what's going to happen. So ask questions, and I will be answering your questions as always. And we're going to, continue educating you on what's coming up. Okay. Yes. So if you would like to schedule a consultation with me, you can actually go to my website, lilylegal.com, click on contact us, and you will be able to pick a date and time for us to talk. You can also call my office at 508-443-1788. But yeah, that's the way you can get in touch with me if you want to schedule that consultation. If you are, if it's a topic that I do not handle, I can always refer you to someone else. So I just really want to be a resource. Because the first time around, I was not on YouTube. I was not, doing these videos, but I do know that this time around, I am here. I want to be a resource. So if there is questions, if there are things that you need help with, if it's not something I handle, I can send you referrals. And that's kind of what that's my way of just giving back during this time, is just schedule that consultation. Let's talk, see if I can help you. And if I can't, you will know before the consultation is over. All right. And sometimes you do the consultation and there's really nothing you qualify for, but at least you know that before you do anything else, right? So, all right. So that's all I have for you today. Let me know, again, if you have questions, put them in the comments. I do go back and respond to all of those. And I will see y'all next week. And we will talk more about what to expect. And if anything comes up, between now and then, we will, of course, talk about it. Okay. Oh, great question, Keith. Is application for U.S. citizenship to the U.S. Embassy also affected under Trump administration? So it's going to depend on if they continue making those applications a priority at the embassy. So right now, the consular report of birth abroad are a priority at the embassy. And most of the time with the different administrations, U.S. citizenship applications, especially when it's someone that's already a U.S. citizen, they're just trying to get documentation to prove it. So there's a difference between applying for citizenship from getting a green card and being a citizen from birth. In those situations, the U.S. government typically make those applications a priority. So I do not foresee them, making those less of a priority. However, anything can happen. So if you have not put in your application yet and you qualify to put in the application, go ahead and do it now. Most embassies, you can get an interview within a month or two. Even some, we were able to get an interview within like a week or two of filing. So get those done. Like I said, you want to, whatever you can apply for it now. Don't wait. Okay. Because we do not know. And, it's the unknown that's the problem. Once we know exactly what they want to do, we can better, handle it. But right now we don't know. So you want to be absolutely on the safe side and get your applications in. Like I said, embassies are making those a priority. So you're going to get an interview pretty quickly. So get those in. All right. If you have any other questions, let me know. Let me just check. All right. So I do not see any other questions. Thank you all so much for joining me. Like let's keep working together, keep supporting each other, and let's keep the fear to the side right now. Okay. Most of the things, like I said at the beginning, that the mass deportation stuff. Again, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, the denaturalization stuff, there's a whole process that needs to happen before that becomes a thing. So let's just put that fear to the side and just live our lives, at least for the next couple months, until we really have something to be afraid of. Let's just live our life. Okay? All right. So thank y'all so much again for joining me, and I will see y'all next week with more immigration talk. All right. Bye.